So in this video, we're going to talk about that exciting thing, very contentious, frequency rates. Can you believe them or should you question them? We're doing a series of 7 videos where we've got our partners together from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and we're going to ask them a series of questions. Stick around, because at the end, we're going to hear from our UK partners, and they may have a slightly different approach to these questions. So Andrew, what is the purpose of the frequency rates? What value can you achieve from them? And do you believe in them?
Part of the issue that does get debated, and part of the problem I personally have with them, is you're looking at what's happened in the past, and it's not necessarily a direct correlation with what your performance will be in the future, and it's often taken that way. And if we manage to reduce that rate over time, then that will necessarily, we're on the right trend to guarantee our future performance. It's not a bad indicator, but I think people need to realise the limitations too. You're also, there's no way of predicting the future particularly, but you're also gathering a lot of data on how we performed over the last quarter or the last year. What is not isolated from that too is just some randomness, some pure chance. If I didn't have a car accident this year, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be a better driver in the next 12 months. So that's, personally, there's some limitations with them. I'll let other people jump in, other people might have another view.
I think there might be some benefits to it as well, because in my mind the benefit of incident rates would be benchmarking comparison across industry. However, I think it's imperative that we have clarity around the factors that are being using. Are they using 200,000 hours? Are they using 1 million? So I think it is a good tool to benchmark your organisation across industry norms and standards, but I think clarity is required around the method of calculation.
I think part of the issue is the lack of clear standards by which organisations and industries actually measure the rates. And then in particular, I guess within my environment, Western Australia, and the influence of the mining resource sector, certainly the frequency rates is really a very important issue that then forms the basis for determining who's going to be successfully quoting for or be successful in acquiring a tender, because they'll automatically exclude somebody with a certain rate. So what do you think they're going to put in their tender? A rate that's lower than that. Also, with my experience, I've seen and witnessed examples of intimidation by HSCQ people from well-known mining contractors bullying and intimidating healthcare workers, encroaching on the privacy of the individual that may have been injured. And that's what's driving that is that rate and the need or the focus on not reporting that and getting that rate down. And I don't believe that's acceptable.
It started with a good intent, but when it gets caught up in
that's
contract
right.
process,
It's created a very unhealthy culture across the board.
I agree with all of that, but I think there's also a risk for smaller companies, or not so much a risk, but just an issue in that it's going to be really spiky. There's just not enough incidents or lost time injuries to get a real nice, reliable trend going there as well. So organisations that I've worked for in the past where they've had huge employee numbers, it works pretty well as far as giving you a bit of an idea of how often people are getting injured, but smaller organisations, it can go, you don't really know what's happening, and just random bad chances can completely ruin your rates. So I don't think it's that useful for small companies.
Well, all of us have seen clients that, for business reasons, that they try to keep the numbers lower, asking the injured person to come in just to get the form so they can say that they were not off work, more than so many hours. But it's one of those things that I think that the concept of it is good. The whole world is now going towards gathering data and actioning them. And we can see that on Google searches, that it would just analyzes your behavior and the data and would just predict what you like to purchase, what you like to buy, and what you like to see on YouTube. The whole world is now revolving around gathering data and acting on them. So I think the concept of it is good. If you know that consistently you have had 10 near misses with vehicles, it is very likely that you will have similar number in following months, but also there is that personal touch of there are also some other things that could be outside those analytics that you should train people on. So I think the concept of it is good, but how companies use it, because there's a business aspect to it, then then there are different drivers.
Also, as an industry too, particularly in safety, if some of these measures are having trade-offs that are heading in the wrong direction, let's be open and honest about them rather than just protect the measure for its own sake. Yes, it's got good intent, good purpose. I've seen personally examples where people are sort of asked to have their injury managed and their rehab managed off the book so it doesn't affect the rates and things like that, and that's not, we need to direct it back to the outcome we want.
The issue I've got is it's a lag indicator. At the end of the day, it's a lag indicator. And there was a fantastic webinar put on by Greg Smith and Craig from Mango, where Greg Smith said, well, look, if you have a death and you're in front of the judge and they go, oh, look at your LTIFR for the last 5 years, and it's all just fantastic. And we've submitted this to the board every month and done all this, the amount of effort spent on getting these figures and everything else means absolutely zip, because they will go and say, what did you do in your company to ensure that the staff member knew what they were doing? Did you follow it up? Did you check that the young kids in the organisation that are apprentices out in construction did have proper training? Did you, and were followed up to understand? I mean, some of the big constructors now have the apprentices, the first years and whatever, in a green hat. They're a greenhorn, literally. But, a supervisor will know and go over and talk to them and ask them, do you understand the risks when you're doing this job? You're pouring a slab or whatever else. Yeah, that to me is more critical than the amount of time wasted by HSEQ officers putting together data to present to the board. What's the benefit of it, really?
Yeah, a lot of it's driven by regulators as well.
Oh,
in
for
terms
sure.
of that reporting
Yeah.
requirement. So that's again
But-
creating a culture itself.
But they haven't
I
thought
think-
about the big picture because it's easy. Oh, we've got all this data here. But hey, what a lead indicator. How many management walkarounds have we done to have a look at the risks or making sure that our system is actually doing what it's meant to
Yeah,
do?
I agree with all that, but I think you can still use it with lead indicators.
True,
Um,
but benchmark.
Yeah.
Good for benchmarking, but it's still a lag.
Yeah, because
Anyway,
it's the
Laurie.
one thing that we have that everyone uses. That's probably the one advantage that it's got. Sorry, Laurie.
I hate to be the devil's advocate here. I do not believe in lost time injury frequency rates.
That's two of us.
One of the reasons for it is if you actually go and look at the standard, you can take a company, if you take two identical companies, work exactly the same man hours, all right? One has 3 deaths, one has 3 guys off 2 days. You calculate the lost time injury frequency rate for that, they're identical.
Yeah.
All right, so when you're comparing those two things, you're comparing apples with oranges. all right? However, having said that, there are environments that they are useful. That if you're within a company and you put your standards there as to what is reportable, how it's reportable, what incidents are going to be reported, it is a great internal measure. The problem I have is when we start to compare, and you're saying, Nick, about companies with industries.
Yeah.
I worked in the sugar milling industry, and I looked at some of their lost time injury frequency rates, and you're comparing a sugar mill that was listed 1 to 25, I think,
Yeah.
and in it was really interesting that one company there that always had the best lost time injury frequency rate, you used to look at their medical only treatments. Yet they had more medical only treatments than anybody else, but yet they always had the lowest lost time injury frequency rates. Unfortunately, that tells me something.
Yeah.
That somebody's manipulating the figures, industry within the
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
But they do. It does have a positive, but yeah, I'm not a great believer in it as an indicator of performance.
But I think we can all agree that it's one of a suite of many tools that we have,
Yeah.
both leading and lagging indicators as part of a toolbox that we've got.
And we also agree that it's not working great now, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't do it better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they need to review the standard
Yep.
and the way the standard is put together,
Yep.
so that when you have, if you add your lost time injury frequency rate with your average lost time rate,
Yeah.
and then came up with a rate,
Yeah.
that will be a truer indicator because it's going to give you severity as well as frequency.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. So frequency rates, I think they provide a useful barometer as to how you're doing performance-wise, but they're not the be-all and end-all, and it has to be put into the context of what you're doing. You know, if you've done absolutely nothing to sort of try and improve them, but you've seen an improvement, well, you know, great, you've improved, and the frequency rates are showing that you're improving, but you know, there's nothing behind it, no meat or substance. It's, you know, it's part of the picture. Yes, it's a good barometer, and we all measure the same way typically for, say, accident frequency rates, so it's good in that respect. But there's so many other factors that drive performance and whether or not you're on the right track or not, that it's a small part of the overall picture.
When I put this question out to LinkedIn, I think this was one of the most controversial ones that we had. Whereas you said that everybody seems to use frequency rates on the same basis, I seem to get people coming back and disagreeing with how they were approaching it. So there was some debate there in the first instance, but theoretically, you're right, they should be providing a useful barometer. And if they're using the same numbers, you should be able to compare like with like and gain an understanding of how you're performing within the industry.
I would actually respond and say again, it depends on the sector you're in. We asked this question again to multiple clients. The response we got is that we have to provide it in some cases because it can be part of a tendering process. Also, in some cases, if you're part of a framework, but the previous one I spoke about in terms of certification, they simply have to be providing that information to their end client every quarter or every month. In terms of the value, interestingly, I got quite a different response. So it's not something we take a great deal of notice of, was two of the responses I got. It's actually something we just have to do. So it's not adding a great deal of value to the business. On the back of that, what was added was, what's more important to us is actually how we handle incidents rather than the actual number or the frequency rate it generates. And this includes near misses and safety observations, which they believe provide more information than actually a frequency rate. And then we have others that simply say we don't have incidents, so we don't even consider it as something we have to measure. I think it can serve a purpose for some reasons, but I think the people on the receiving end of getting that information, I think often it can be quite misleading, because it could be lots of incidents or potential incidents are underlying, and that frequency rate is showing quite a different measure of the culture within a business.
So if you enjoyed this video, maybe watch the previous week's one where we talked about, is there value in getting certified?